Welcome everyone who is watching and listening. This is Context. I am Mr. Beat and joined by, who are you? Who is that man that I'm looking at?
Robert from Reading Through History.
Right, and it's just us two this week. We originally were going to have Paul Sargent join us, and at the last minute something came up and he could not join us, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll have him in the coming weeks and we'll talk about what we were going to talk about, which that was the standards that we have to teach as history teachers, because if somebody's watching this right now, they may not even know this, but myself and Robert, we are actually just history teachers in real life. And we do this podcast and we make videos on the side. And so Paul Sargent does the same thing. He runs a YouTube channel that's primarily geared towards APUSH and AP Euro students, and he's a teacher in real life in Pennsylvania, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Have you ever been there, Robert?
I've never been to Pennsylvania.
Oh, my wife and her family went when she was a kid, but I've never been there either. But we were going to compare standards, and I guess we'll just have to wait for another time. But there's always plenty to talk about, as history is.
There certainly would be, but we had to find something else at the last minute.
Yeah, it's all right. So yeah, what have you been up to, Robert? Your school year
just
started.
Getting back to school. I mean, I've already had 7 days in class and 5 days, I guess. No, 4 days of that wonderful staff development. And, you know, the teacher website.
Yeah, I've been back less than that. The students started last Thursday. What was that? The 18th, I believe. And I started about a week before. So yeah, it's always an adjustment for teachers this time of year. You know, you come in with so much energy, and then after those first couple days, you're just like,
that's just 2 days will do you in.
Yeah.
It's always so hot.
At least the students are good for the most part. The honeymoon is going on. They're not disruptive generally.
Yeah.
So you guys been posting. I saw Jake posted a couple of videos. Did a little bio on Hillary Clinton and a bio on Donald Trump, and I must say he did a really good job. I'm not sure if did you write the words on those? The script?
No, that's all Jake.
Okay.
I did edit and edited the lessons that go with them. If you go and check those out and love them, go to teacherspayteachers.com and there's lessons on there. You can get questions and you can use them with the video or just use the text or both. Because it is a unit.
Yeah. Let's see. Present to everyone.
Try.
Look at that. Yeah, here we go. Teachers pay teachers. I put stuff up here a long time ago, and
there it is.
Yeah.
Now, if you go scroll down a little bit, there should be a bar. Yes, on that sort by. Just do that by most recent, and it'll show you what we've been up to.
Okay.
Reading through history.
Oh, what is a political party? Ooh, great question.
Yeah, that one's free. You can get that one, Matt. It's free.
Oh, well, wish list for now. Oh, I don't want to log in. No, so
not live.
You guys have
the Democrat Party. I'm currently working on the Republican Party one, but I have to edit through it like 4 or 5 times, to make sure it's as good as it can be grammatically.
Right.
And it's brain, but Hillary and Donald, there it is. Not yet rated.
They look so cute together. Look at them. And then you made them look like decent human beings.
It's amazing what professional photographers can do, isn't it?
They clean up so well. Yeah. And don't forget, he's going to do it. You promise you're going to do a third-party candidates one too, right?
Yeah, we do. It is written, but again, I have to do all of that editing. When he will make the video, I do not know. But he's also
Yeah.
slowly making. We're not releasing them yet, just to build up people's, suspense isn't the right word, is it? That wouldn't be the right word, but to build up interest.
Momentum.
He is working on. They haven't been released yet, but 2 of them are made. But the Halloween series, probably coming to you late September, early October. So we already had a few, but he's going to try to get as many of them done as he can. So
much of what you do is outside of the YouTube channel, which I tend to forget. So it's like,
oh yeah,
when you
that's the only place we make any coin is TPT and the books.
I don't make any coin anywhere. No, my president's songs actually they sell sometimes. I get some money from Spotify from the president's songs more than anything.
That's nice.
Or streaming on YouTube. But
yeah, because YouTube, that's if the video has ads on it. The number of videos that they have taken monetization off of on here of mine, it's just insane. They took it off of my Teddy Roosevelt's Food and Drug Administration because it had the word drug in it.
That is ridiculous. Anytime you have the word war in there or Hitler in there,
Nazis, anything Confederate, anything dealing with the Civil War.
I've noticed they've been getting better if you appeal to them.
I appealed like 3 weeks ago and it says under review. It takes forever.
It takes forever, but it's still better than it used to be. So I know I had a lot of videos that, they had over 1,000 views, and I'm like, come on,
that's $1 lost right there.
That's $1, man. I need my dollar. Yeah.
Yeah, because what the Rebel Yell sounded like, that's $100. That video's got almost 100,000 views.
Oh, that's your biggest video, isn't it?
Yeah. By far.
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say, but I do know that it's always a fine line too. If you wonder if you use fair use material, like Cypher does a lot of that stuff, and it's always kind of like, they need extra time to review it, and you always worry about getting called out for copyright.
He sits there and holds them until they say it's okay, and then he releases them typically.
Yeah, that's why he tries to do it in advance. But
I can't sit on a video for that long.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my presidential election series. I've been trying to work ahead of time because tomorrow I start my graduate classes for the fall. I'm taking 2 of them, and I'm going to be reading thousands of pages, and so I've got to slow it down with the videos. But I'm kind of in a conundrum because I promised everybody that I would finish that series before Election Day, and I have to kind of release, 2 videos a week, 2 episodes a week for a little while to try to meet that deadline. And it's been making things stressful for me, but I'm trying. I'm currently working on 1944. So actually I'm wrapping that one up. That should be released tomorrow. And then I've already written the script for 1948. Just got to record the audio and video for that. But it's been a fun series. I just kind of wish I would have started it earlier.
Yeah, and once you have all the scripts for them, you can put out a Kindle book on the presidential election.
It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all.
We'll make a lot more money off of that than YouTube revenue.
Yeah, because it's all in a language that a 5th grader can understand. My demographic I always aim for is 5th through 12th grade. Yeah. That's not a bad idea. Might do that. One issue I have had is I've been trying to. I always have a song in the background that came out that year and it was a big hit that year. So, for example, in 1944, you have Bing Crosby. What was the song I used? One of Bing Crosby's songs. No. But it was like a #1 hit that year. But
presidential election, White Christmas.
But the song is now, it's not in the public domain yet because generally it's 75 years. Sometimes it's 75 years after the songwriter dies, and copyright law in the
Anything
United States.
after that, you're not gonna be able to use the song.
So no, I can use the song. I just won't get any. I won't be able to monetize the video, and so I went ahead and used that.
Or you take a 30-second loop of the instrumental and just loop it over and over again.
There's not much of an instrumental on that, but that way by the time we get to more modern elections, it'd be kind of cool to hear more modern music because I started off with, 1788, 89. That was.
You'd have to wait like 70 more years to finish your video series.
Yeah, that's all right. I just won't make money off that. It's more for exposure. It's not like I make much money anyway. So many people use ad block these days. They use ad block.
$16 a month goes a long way, Matt.
Yeah, that pays for my
$200
cereal.
a year.
Yeah, I guess, but it's mostly just promotion for, I don't know, promotion for what? I don't know. But the good news is at least some people are watching these videos, so that's really cool. It's more than I ever would have anticipated because my very first video I posted specifically for, my Mr. Beat Social Studies channel was Inventions of the Industrial Revolution. And it was only for my students. I posted it for my students for a class. I never expected.
Yeah, I've seen reference to teachers saying they show that in class.
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, no, I had
it was Tom Ritchie's like, I show that to my students.
That's how he just found out who I was. And what's crazy is Tom started doing that after me, and look how big he's gotten, So it's pretty cool.
He has the more dedicated students.
A push, AP Euro,
students.
Yeah. AP government. Yeah, we don't even have AP courses at my school. So
No.
You don't either, right? Yeah. We have dual credit, but that's about it. So, yeah. Anyway, we haven't really talked about current events here. So, other than our current lives.
So I guess exciting.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I forgot to announce the email address to contact us. It's contextpodcast@gmail.com, contextpodcast@gmail.com. And you can reach us there or through the videos. We've gotten comments through there as well. If you go on iTunes, make sure you review our podcast there. Usually people get their podcasts through iTunes, but I shouldn't assume. If it's Stitcher or another outlet, whatever it is, it really helps us if you can review the podcast. So that's why I put that up on the screen. You want to talk about the Olympics first, or you want to go to what I found on Reddit?
Oh, the closing ceremonies. I watched my first event of the entire Olympics this year. I watched the gold medal basketball game.
Oh.
I thought Serbia might make it interesting, and it was for about a quarter, and then that was all she wrote. But little tiny Serbia, 9 million people, finished with a record of 4-4, and somehow they were in the gold medal game. That's like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I know they do the pool play thing, and
yeah, that's how they got.
And, if you lose a couple of close games, it's, I guess, apparently you can make it to the gold medal game. That was bizarre.
It's a little different for sure.
Yeah, if they'd have won that game, they'd have won the gold medal with a record of 5-3, and the U.S. would have gotten a silver with a record of 7-1.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Well, the first time the United States played Serbia, it was a much closer game.
Yeah, 3 points.
Yeah. And I watched that first game, and, talk about nationalism, patriotism, what both wrapped in. I mean, I was so into that game, and I was so, I was a little surprised at myself. I'm 34 years old. I thought I'm past this, tribalist instinct that, my guys better win, dadgummit. And like, when I was watching it, I was just like, man, I was really into it, and just kind of I started to feel myself hating Serbia there for a while. It's so bizarre, but
I was actually cheering for Serbia. Not, I don't necessarily know. I would have probably been a little embarrassed if they would have won, but there's a part of me that like I'm so into cheering underdogs and teams that shouldn't win. And
I
I
just
mean
think they're.
those NBA players will be okay, you know. I think it would be funny because like when Argentina, won the gold medal, I was like, dang, Argentina. And like, where's Argentina now? I mean, that's what I don't get.
You're
I
just a
remember when
communist.
Croatia and them used to be pretty good. Like, what happened to Croatia?
Yeah, it's something about the Balkans, right? I mean, we get a lot of NBA players from there, but Australia looked pretty good in the Olympics, and I mean,
Yeah, I didn't.
what's
I mean, was that
crazy,
like a bunch of Australian white guys? Like, because I never saw that team or
you
what's
know?
going on with that.
Oh, that's not what I wanted to Google. How, how many NBA players, not can't dunk, but from other countries? Because it's by far there's more.
Foreign, maybe how many foreign players are in the NBA? They said it today. One time it was up to like 75, I think. They said it was in the 40s or 50s, something like that.
Okay, well, it says here after the start of the 2014-15 season, there were 101 players from 37 countries and territories, and compare that to 91-92, where there was just 23 players from 18 countries. So that's quite a jump. Yeah, Fred and I were talking about this, and I'm like, that's quite a. I mean, there's a reason why there's a lot more parity in the Olympics with basketball these days, is because of that. I mean,
That's what they
we've seen
said
it.
in the game I watched today. They said it was because of the 92 Olympics in Barcelona. There
Dream
was a
team,
big move of like other countries wanted the NBA players in there.
right?
And they won every game by an average of 45 points, I think it was.
Oh, it was
Now we have 2 and 3 point games. Of
right.
course, they're not the best NBA players. I mean, there was no Russell Westbrook, no James Harden, no LeBron James, no Steph Curry. A couple of those guys, I was like, who are they?
Yeah, yeah. I noticed that too. I don't really follow the NBA like I used to, but one thing about this sport is kind of a microcosm. You could say it about other sports too, but of how culture is just it spreads so rapidly around the world, and I think it's really been a net positive because just like with music or with art or anything, I think it's kind of helped unite the world in many ways, and
A lot of
it's
the
just
world, I mean, there were still
yeah.
big issues at this Olympic, with Middle Eastern teams and Israelis and things
Oh,
like that. But
nothing like 1972 though, right?
more, more Islamic women participating. I think they might have made too big of a deal out of it, but it was interesting to see because that's something I don't think you would have seen much of 10, 15 years ago.
Just women in general, I think have made big strides in the Olympics, even though
Playing,
there was still kind of like a lot of commentary about how the semantics, the language that were used to describe women in the Olympics. But I think that shows you how much progress has been made in that regard. But the fact that there are more countries participating in the Olympics than ever before, and let me just pull up the good old Wikipedia page and show you something you might be interested in here. There's 207 nations now participating, and that I think is up from.
that's about as many as there are, aren't they? Depending on who you talk
Yeah,
to, I think I always say around
yeah,
200. I think the highest is like 211 or 12 or
right.
something like that.
I don't know if Southern Sudan is in there. I'm assuming they were, but yeah, that is because even in the Athens Olympics, which was I think Athens was 2004, there was only around 200 nations participating in that Olympics. I read that, and so I mean, more than 11,000 athletes. Oh yeah, it is. Oh, it says right here. First time entrants, Kosovo, South Sudan, the refugee Olympic team. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I found that pretty fascinating. That
No, they won no medals.
yeah. Oh, and then of course the United States. Guess who had the most gold medals in this Olympics?
Oh boy, Yahoo wouldn't let me forget that.
Yeah.
Check my dadgum email.
Talk about.
Three in pairs.
Well, I mean, I think Michael Phelps alone had more gold medals than all other countries. But speaking of Michael Phelps, he made history. I mean, he pretty much is some argued he's the greatest Olympian of all time now, even though there was one guy that had more medals than him, I believe, in ancient Greece. And I better recall.
I mean, it's impressive any way you look at it. I mean, it's a freak of nature.
Well, the fact that he came back out of retirement, and Usain Bolt, man, he was pretty fun to watch. The longest standing modern Olympics athletics record. Oh, that's the men's one. Let's see. I'm trying to find who has won the most medals. I'll probably have to
Sometimes you can't find something like that, which you would think you should be able to.
Well, yeah, because the Olympics, a lot of people forget that it hasn't been around for most of modern history. Like, it was resurrected.
I mean, 1896 or 1892, something like that.
Oh, here we go. This site seems fairly credible. So we have, well, yeah, it says Michael Phelps. This might just be in the modern era.
Yeah, because I mean, those ancient Olympics, that was just Greeks against Greeks, Spartans against Thebians and Athenians, and
yeah,
it's not like the Persians were sending over a team.
I probably should give a shout out before we move on here, because Cypher did do a video about this as well and got me thinking about the topic. The historic importance of the Olympics. He goes through the entire history.
I mean, he did send a message that said, "I'm ready anytime."
Yeah,
that's tried him on 10 minutes notice.
We probably should have, because with Paul, it was a last minute thing, so we had planned it with him for a while before that too. So that's all right. We'll catch up with him. But back to the just the Olympics this year. I mean, being in Rio de Janeiro, we had a lot of issues. You could say, the whole Zika virus, the whole don't drink the water or you might die.
Bulls turning green, rampant crime.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this the first time the Olympics were in South America? That can't be right. Somebody told me that, and I was thinking about
I would be surprised if it has been down there before.
No, yeah, my friend was correct. It's the first Olympic Games in South America, so that's a pretty significant thing.
Who would have done it, or who could have pulled it off, or?
Probably Sao Paulo. I never say that's the name of that city right. In Argentina, maybe it would be a possibility, or Santiago in Chile or something. I don't know, but not a whole lot of cities probably could handle that infrastructure. And yeah, Rio really struggled with it, as most of the media pointed out. But at least it happened.
Who is it worth it to host the Olympics anymore?
No. Most of the cities lose money, or the countries lose money on it.
They're blaming the Greek debt crisis on the Olympics. All the time, money, effort, and energy they invested into it, and they lost billions of dollars, and can't maintain any of the facilities after everyone leaves. And
right, what do you do with the facility? Like even Atlanta, I went to the Atlanta Olympics when I was a kid, and I feel lucky that I was able to make that trip. It was really important for my mom that we make the trip, and we only saw like you know, the secondary events like field hockey or equestrian, whatever, but or rowing. I think we saw canoeing, but still, it was a really incredible experience to see people from all around the world in one place. But yeah, you go back to Atlanta today, and Atlanta's actually doing okay. But a lot of those buildings afterwards, they weren't quite sure what to do with them. Like, and you can say the same thing. Salt Lake City had Olympics there recently. Vancouver. Well, I read that Los Angeles actually didn't end up making money off of their Olympics when they hosted them back in 1984. But generally, yeah, recently, most of these cities are in the negative.
All that, it just costs too much to build that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bigger than
It's
it's ever
only
been
like
before.
a 2-week event, so it's like, who would want the stress? I mean, something like Japan's not particularly fond of, having large numbers of foreigners in their country. They're gonna do it in Tokyo, 2020.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Interesting to see how the Japanese do an Olympics. The China one was good. I mean, I don't remember hearing anything too
Other than
outrageous.
the smog was a big issue for the outdoor events.
The food, they had to take the dog and horse meat off the market to not offend foreigners. I remember
Some
seeing
foreigners.
that story.
Well, Rio, I think the biggest outcry has been the amounts of the neighborhoods that were gentrified, that were pushed to the side. They were forced to move out. People were, said, hey, you have to move out, eminent domain going on. And these people were generally, lower class to lower middle class. And, they didn't want to leave their homes. They loved their neighborhoods. A lot of these neighborhoods were not that bad, but they were still forced out. And then they built this giant wall along the highway from the airport to the facilities.
On the other side of it are the barrios, the slums.
Yeah, that's a kind of a new thing. I mean, here in the United States, we forget that a lot of places in South America, or I should say Latin America or Africa, the way cities are usually set up are the nicer neighborhoods are in the interior, and the suburbs are the barrios, the slums. And that's kind of what was the situation there. Like, they didn't want anybody to see how bad it really was in some of these neighborhoods. So,
there's places down there the police won't even go.
Kind of like Chicago, parts of Chicago they won't go to.
Fully armed. I mean, fully armed, like machetes and machine guns and.
Oh yeah, even Mexico City, which I mean, well, there's a lot of Mexican cities that are like that as well, and that's just next door,
Like you said, we've got Chicago and Baltimore and Milwaukee and areas in Los Angeles that you wouldn't want to go into.
Yeah, I think, and there's a lot in common with a lot of these Latin American cities for sure, just because a lot of it's tied to the drug war, a lot of it's tied to the black market. What is illegal that we can make money off of, that's creating this violence going on. But yeah, I don't know. Back to the Olympics. I mean, I think the Olympics is weird though in a way that it does show you. It's not weird. I guess this is completely natural. It shows you how tribal all of us really still are. Like, it's meant to be this event that unites everyone, and I think there's a lot of great. Like, you look at the opening and closing ceremony. The closing ceremony is going on right now as we talk, but they really are pretty amazing events, and they bring so many people together, and it can be a really, without sounding cheesy, a beautiful thing, but at the same time, I think just like soccer around the world does, it really makes us back much more nationalistic than we would be otherwise. Sports, it divides us more than it unites us in that regard. Do you agree with that? Do you think that it's the Olympics does it divide us more, or does it really unite us like we like to think?
I mean, I don't necessarily even think that it does divide us. I mean, you got the ones that they love cheering against the United States. I mean, like that's what the Greek people love doing when they hosted it. We'll cheer for the Greeks and we'll cheer against the Americans, because it's one of the most anti-American countries out there. But at least they're not reverting to terrorism. We're at least competing against teams instead of fighting wars and such with them. I mean, it's better they're out on the field, right? And it's with virtually any of them. I mean, who's more than likely to win. I mean, I don't necessarily see it as a divisive thing. And if it is, it's kind of it's good that they're competing in a healthy way instead of it's not hooligans out in the streets fighting. But yeah, I'm glad it at least doesn't turn to like soccer riots in South America, or heck, they even had them in France whenever bunch of English hooligans run around tearing up the city of France not too long ago. I remember seeing that story.
That's what I had in mind, actually.
They were out there with chairs and throwing them at each other. These are supposed to be the civilized countries. So, I mean, I've always liked the Olympics. So, honestly, this is the first one I haven't watched hardly any of because I don't have TV anymore.
Yeah, I think we didn't even get NBC on the antenna, so I only caught clips on YouTube, but I do.
My sister-in-law had to get rid of her dish because NBC contract. I mean, this is really what it's all about. NBC was asking for too much money because they had the Olympics coming up and the contract renewal, and Dish wouldn't pay them. That was enough. A lot of people just canceled their Dish network.
That's going to be a big change in the next few years. Is the fall of not only the major networks but cable TV is just going to
the mainstream media and everything. It's going down.
It is. It's even older generations. I mean, who are less likely to cancel their cable or
yeah. I didn't foresee it. The reason I didn't watch, there was a couple things I tried to watch, but I do that live streaming thing, and you've seen enough of the Olympics in the past to know that it'll just jump from event to event. Something will be happening. If it's too big of a blowout, they'll turn it over here. If this gets delayed, they'll show something else. So it was, it would say what it is, but I would, click on it. The link wouldn't work, or it would be something else. I click on it and it's equestrian instead of gymnastics or something.
Yeah.
That's the main reason I didn't watch any of it.
Well, back to the point about nationalism, I do kind of, the way you put it kind of made me think, yeah, you made a good point that the Olympics provides an outlet for countries to, within a set of rules, kind of celebrate our country and have a more fun-spirited competition, in an arena that's safer than, say, the streets or through, warfare. But I do find it still somewhat of a thing that maybe won't last forever, where I feel like as we evolve as a species, that our tribalist instincts are going to be less and less, is what I predict, and it probably won't be in our lifetime per se, but I can see it happening where countries don't matter as much as they did in the past, and nationalism wanes slowly. I don't know. I see, because I see tribalism at all levels right now. Like, for example, if the rivalry between the University of Kansas and the University of Missouri, it's kind of waned a little bit because they're not in the same conference anymore. But when I was in college in the early 2000s at KU, we hated Mizzou. We hated Mizzou fans. Like, it seemed like it was just pure hatred. It was hard for me to be a friend with somebody knowing that individual was a Missouri fan. And now my brother-in-law is a Missouri fan, and I'm just thinking, like, how silly that we get so. And like the Chiefs and Raiders, I go to Chiefs games. I used to hate the Raiders when I was in high school. Like, and like, you're a Raiders fan? But how ridiculous is that? I mean, tribalism is one of those things to me that is kind of goes back to when we used to be apes, like like we haven't. That's like a very uncivilized thing, in my opinion. I understand why tribalism exists because that it's linked to our survival and our ancestors. But anymore, it's becoming less necessary for survival. I mean, if anything, we need to get rid of a lot of those instincts in order to get along with in a globalized society. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, in a globalized world. No, but you were talking about it with sports and stuff. I mean, you see it in politics too. It doesn't even have to be sports. It's just people. Like you said, we evolved belonging in groups, and there's in groups and there's out groups. There's them and there's us, and so I kind of see the Olympics as a good way of bringing everyone together. And yeah, I mean, India and Pakistan's cricket teams are always going to hate each other, but
I don't know. That's like I'm saying, like those are two countries that I'd be curious to see how.
There's a lot more there than sports.
There is, yeah. That's Bill Clinton before he left office. One of the last things he said to, or I don't remember what reporter he said this to, but what kept him up at night more than anything was that relationship between Pakistan and India. People often forget how much hatred there is between citizens of both those countries, but that might be waning too. I haven't heard a lot of world news,
just because there's so much
world headlines.
Excuse me, so much other stuff going on around the world.
Yeah, they tend to be a little bit more civilized there than, say, Afghanistan or Syria.
Just Pakistan within Pakistan,
right,
fighting each other.
That's a good point too. Yeah, I mean, Pakistan's what a crazy place to live. I had a friend that actually went there. Thank you. I got milk and cookies from my wife, ladies and gentlemen. Milk and cookies.
Where's mine?
Jealous.
That's not healthy night food, man.
Thank you.
I go straight to the gut. Oprah says you don't eat after 5:30.
I'll go to the gym. All right. What were you saying? Sorry.
Oh. So I think, seeing more and more teams coming in, or countries, I guess, be a way of putting it. It's a good thing. So it's a progression forward. It's just, I don't know. I mean, in 10, 15 years, who the heck's going to want to host them?
Yeah, economically, there has to be some kind of other way to do it.
I understand them wanting to expand it to more countries, but can they pull it off? I mean, you're seeing it with Sochi and you're seeing it with Rio, with the facilities, and they weren't even done. A lot of time, they were trying to move teams into hotels, didn't even have tiles on the floor, and the wiring was hanging from the ceilings, and the toilets wouldn't flush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if they spread it out to more cities, that would make sense. I mean, they kind of do that already, but I mean, why not have
some events? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be
probably for security reasons and such. Plus, the big parties that have to take place in the Olympic Village. I mean, every year I just see insane stories about the wild parties and the Olympic committees, giving what's a good way of putting it? Protection, like 50,000 units of protection to the Olympians.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's like every year there's a big article about how wild the parties get. And I read my one on it the other day because it's always there. It's well, you got to read this story, and it's like, well, I mean, they're super athletes in the peak performance of their life. They're recognizable, famous celebrities. I mean, what would you expect?
Yeah, I guess that makes
stardom and drive, and a lot of them won't partake in that until their events and such are over. You need the extra testosterone, I guess. It's a weird topic, but that's that unison of all the athletes living together in the village. I mean, that would have to be a cool experience, I would think.
Yeah. Just walking around at the Olympics, I'll never forget in Atlanta in '96, like all the different types of people coming from a small town in Kansas going to that. That was kind of one of those moments in my life where I realized there's a much bigger world out there. And
yeah, I think that's a good reminder too. I mean, people realizing there's a country called Serbia. I mean, I imagine during that game, Google searches for Serbia probably went through the roof. Like, who's Serbia? Where's Serbia?
Everything that we can't accomplish in a geography class that we try to teach in 2 weeks is made up for with, because everybody all of a sudden cares, because people who never would watch gymnastics any other time of the year or for 4 years, they will watch it every single time in that 2 weeks.
That was the one I always enjoyed watching because we had Shannon Miller from Enid, Oklahoma. She was my age. I saw her in '92 and then '96, and then after that, I just because the stuff they can do is just ridiculous.
But you didn't watch Shannon Miller outside of the Olympics, did you? You didn't watch her all year long.
I mean, she was covered on the news a fair amount, but yeah, I mean that stuff wasn't even on TV back then. I mean, you couldn't watch the World Championships and stuff like that. I mean, I would assume today you could, but
yeah. I say we move on to the next topic. Any more about the Olympics?
No, I mean, it's just kind of sad to see them go, but they'll be back in 4 years in Tokyo.
Even though we both didn't watch it much.
I watched one game, one event.
Before we go, do you know why there's 5 rings?
It's supposed to be the continents or something.
Very good. Okay, I was just testing you. Even though one of the rings combines the Americas, how lame is that? But yeah, okay.
Well, they used to be connected until we dug through them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we split them up.
Yeah, got a divorce from South America. Colombia's still upset about it.
It's all Teddy Roosevelt's fault. Okay. Teddy broke up the marriage between North and South America. So if you haven't...
It was a strained marriage anyway.
If you haven't had a chance to check out the history subreddit on Reddit, which is my favorite website, which many of you already know, I just noticed a few things over the past day that were posted that had something in common, and we don't bring this up enough, the discoveries, I think. So just a few discoveries that were made that were posted on here within the last 24 hours. There's one, there is an angry telegram from Joseph Stalin to airplane factory directors. And this is a self-post, meaning this is something that somebody found and they wanted to share with the world. And the actual photo, can you see this?
I can see that, yeah.
Can you read that? It's in Russian, but I know.
Yeah, I know. My Silric is great. Hey guys, what's up? This is Joe. I hear the Nazi army's getting closer to Stalingrad. When are you guys going to do something about this? Yeah, I can read it.
He translated them
all. Okay, yeah.
Unfortunately, and I find this stuff fascinating. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a history dork here, but in the telegram it says, "You have failed our country, our Red Army. You still don't bother to make Il-2. Airplanes Il-2 are needed by our Red Army as bread. Shakeman makes 1 Il-2 per day. Trechakov makes 1-2 MiG-3 per day. This is a mockery of the country, of the Red Army. We need IL-2 MiG-3. Factory 18 thinks he can retort the country, making 1 IL-2 per day. It is harshly mistaken and will pay the penalty. Asking you not to make the government lose its patience. Lose its patience. Demand that you make more ILs. Warning for the last time. Stalin." I just think that captures his personality so well. And I just kind of laughed out loud when I saw that.
He was a lovable guy, wasn't he?
Just like a kitten.
Just cute and cuddly, and
Now this one here, I don't know if you can still see it, but there's another discovery, and there was a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot missing in action in Operation Frantic in World War II. That was in June of 1944. His name was John D. Mumford. His remains and his plane were found just a few days ago, and that's crazy. Like when you have somebody that's MIA and it's been 80 some years or 70 some years, you don't expect something just to turn up like this, and for them to be able to identify everything, that was amazing to me. So that's another translated article here. Somebody translated it down here, but it says here, let's see, the crash site of the American fighter P-51 Mustang shot down by Romanians at June 6, 1944, the day of, I mean, you know, it's D-Day. The exact coordinates of the findings are kept in secret. Now the remains of the Mustang pilot, the second lieutenant John Mumford, Florida, to be searched. The translation wasn't the best here, but they were able to find remains of the plane, and looks like they were able to find of his uniform, I believe. I don't know if it says it right here, but they were found near the New Trojans village in the Volgograd district of the Odessa region, Ukraine. The pilot, so yeah, I said D-Day, but this was happening on the other side of Europe. The pilot identified by the personal token, body to be officially passed to. So yeah, the body was actually recovered. The body.
The skeletal remains, I would assume.
Yeah, the skeletal remains. So imagine being, you know, the relatives of Mumford, and you know, you hear this.
You have to wonder if their family was even aware that they had, you know, someone that was MIA over there. And I mean, just Odessa, Ukraine. I mean, that's the Russian theater of the war. You're like, you said it was shot down on D-Day.
That's the same day, yeah. But this was in.
It's just showing you the scope of the European theater. I mean, I never even give thought to us having anyone over there on the Eastern Front of the European war fighting. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, where was that plane coming from?
Yeah, I didn't even know about Operation Frantic until I read that. So that shows you how little I know about history. But so yeah, I just
landed in Italy, but it's just, that's the stuff that ticks Vladimir Putin off. We're just supposed to keep our nose out of that part of Europe, you know?
Oh, well, yeah, that's
the other thing.
Don't get me started on events.
We just putting 50, speaking of that, I mean, we're just putting 50 nukes in Romania, like right there on the Russian border.
Imagine if they did that to us, like put that along the Mexican border.
Imagine what our reaction would be if they put 50 nukes in Cuba.
I think you are communist, aren't you? No. No, yeah, I mean, NATO is one of those things that we could talk about that for a while. Like the point of NATO in the year 2016, I hear so many passionate supporters of NATO, like, you know, they do good around the world and they keep the peace, and without NATO, there would be World War III. And
they're going to cause World War III.
All I think NATO is just a tool for the Americans to keep our hegemony. It's all I think it is. I mean, it's just, I mean, yeah, it can serve a purpose, but it's supposed to be a military alliance, but people argue about it like it's a political alliance and an
it's
economic
all tied
alliance.
to the European Union and the UN and the global banks. It's all one big.
Well, yeah, that's why no wonder you have all these conspiracies that are related to it about one world government because of organizations like NATO, because it's kind of outserved its purpose in many regards. It was built for the Cold War. It was built to fight the Soviet Union, which hasn't existed for a little while, last time I checked. And so, I mean, you have a lot of people just kind of take it for granted, but they don't actually think about what its true purpose is. I mean, NATO is something that we probably should have a more of a dialogue about. And as much as I have bad things to say about Trump, at least he's brought up NATO, the fact that we need to re-examine why we have NATO, and should we even be a part of NATO? Should NATO even exist? Anyway, that's
probably not. I mean, you know, we've got people in Europe talking about creating a European army. It's like, my gosh, sounds like Napoleon and Hitler.
all Russia has to do is attack one of the countries in NATO, and according to what we've agreed to, we have to fight Russia if that happens. I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like, all they have to do is one attack, and we are obligated to do that. Now, would we actually follow through with that? I don't know. That's another question, but I don't know. What were we talking about?
Well, it's just like, I mean, when Turkey shot down that Russian fighter jet, I mean, if Russia would have responded, Turkey's in NATO.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, what do you expect them to do?
Makes us responsible for the ridiculous actions of other people.
I think respecting sovereignty is something that the United States has kind of had a hard time doing in recent years. It's like they kind of want to have dominance.
Yeah, we like to think we're getting better, but we're running bombing missions over Syria. No one invited us there. You know, Assad invited Russia there. He dang sure didn't invite us there.
Yeah. We don't even know. That's the thing. It's like there's a lot of information about, you know, this classified about our missions, and you'll see on the news like, oh, look, this house was bombed, or this neighborhood block was bombed in Syria or in Yemen or wherever, and sometimes we know we can attribute it to an American airstrike. Sometimes you can attribute it to another country, but a lot of times we don't know. Like, it's not like the rules have all been thrown out in terms of, you know, historically, the rules of war that we had known during the 20th century have all been thrown out the last couple decades. So they kind of get away with, I think, more than we probably know. That's just my assumption. Maybe I'm.
Yeah, and it's in an era where being stealth isn't exactly easy anymore. You know, there's too much information out there, too much technology out there. So you'd think we'd be backing away from that incursion all around the world, but no, they still do it.
What are your opinions on WikiLeaks? Like, are you a supporter of WikiLeaks? Yeah,
I think it's good. I mean, it's the only way we're going to figure some of that stuff out is if they're doing it.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, when they do something like hack into, you know, and release people's social security numbers and credit card numbers and stuff, you know, that's criminal. And of course, our government would say, well, hacking into our, you know, emails and but I mean, the governments are supposed to be transparent.
Right. When no one else is keeping the government accountable, it seems like you need organizations like WikiLeaks. And from what I understand, WikiLeaks is pretty responsible. They, for example, you mentioned the credit card numbers. It's my understanding that they only
the last four digits.
Last four digits, yeah.
Which is not what I heard from the media. So that's what I heard from Assange, right from his mouth in an interview.
Yeah.
So it's just, hey, they release the names and credit card numbers. They don't tell you, oh, it's just the last four numbers.
Big difference.
That's the media. That's what they do.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess we can kind of keep going talking about this.
Journalism degree. Matt.
Oh, that's, you know, they're so interlinked. Maybe we should start talking about why we became teachers now, because this is something we mentioned as a possible topic. Is I think something you could say about me as a that was so important to me was the truth the truth. Like it's that's kind of what led me to want to be a journalist to begin with. And I did used to work in radio and TV for a while, and I kind of got veered down the direction of music journalism. I thought I wanted to do that for a while, but then
Like covering rock bands and stuff.
yeah, that was
You could have worked for the Rolling Stones.
But see that what really drew me to begin, what I forgot about, what I was
I guess
passionate
it'd be
about
Rolling
growing up.
Stone, not the Rolling Stones. I kind of embarrassed myself there. I meant Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah, you're not very hip there. Anyway,
No.
but yeah, the truth meant so much to me growing up. I'll never forget when I was in second or third grade. I think it was third grade, and people at school were starting to talk about Santa Claus. And if you still believe in Santa Claus and you're watching this right now, you need to turn it off. I'll give you a moment. Okay, now I was at Pizza Hut in my hometown, Augusta, Kansas, with my dad, and I was asking him, hey man, I didn't say hey man, I said hey dad. Tell me, be straight up. The kids at school are talking about how Santa Claus is not real, and they're making fun of people that do believe in him, and they're citing all this evidence that he's not real. Just be straight up with me. Is Santa Claus real? And of course he tells me, and I break down crying. Like I feel like my mom and dad are supposed to be the ones I can trust on everything. And like when you can't trust your mom and dad to tell you, so I took it very hard. I mean, when you lie to me, it's something that I think it deeply affects me, and like I don't have trust issues by any means. That hasn't hurt any of my personal relationships, I don't think. But like I said, that's just an example of how the truth has always meant so much to me. And so when I decided, when the time came for me to choose a career, that's why maybe I kind of leaned towards journalism. But then later, I think I learned towards history teacher, because history is the truth about the past, and there's still so much about the past that we don't know.
And history literally means investigation.
Yes, and so that side
word for investigation.
Oh, when I worked at the TV station, I worked at a TV station in Topeka, and what I noticed is that, well, we all know that they're just trying to make money, but they're not so much concerned with the truth. They're concerned about ad revenue, but they're also concerned about what's shocking, or what's gripping, or something that can keep a viewer's attention. That the truth was always secondary. I mean, the investigative reporters that I used to see growing up, nowadays it's extremely rare to come across them. Like we talked about that movie Spotlight last episode. I mean, I got so excited watching that movie as that movie was going. I mean, I was like, yeah, this is what journalism is supposed to be. But I feel like historians now, I kind of had more of a role with that. Historians now kind of act like the true investigative reporters, that they dig deep, they get to the bottom of things. They don't, and nowadays, they don't just assume that there's one official narrative, like Cypher was arguing last episode as well. There's not just, there's orthodox and revision. It's much more complex than that. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to say is what kind of led me more towards being more passionate about being a history teacher, because I felt like I'll never forget, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident. In high school, how were you taught the Gulf of Tonkin incident? Do you remember that?
Not taught any history at all in high school.
Well, see, that's a whole other thing.
Teacher didn't do anything. He just sat there and read the newspaper.
Yeah, so that's a whole. Well, basically, though.
No, the correct answer would be like, how did I feel the first time I learned about it and saw it and thought, dang, never should have gotten involved in that war. It was just a big lie, and the LBJ administration was doing it to try and get us involved, and certain people could make money, and 58,000 Americans died over there, and how many millions of people died in Vietnam as a result, and Agent Orange, and the incursion into Cambodia. And then I learned, well, dang, Spanish-American War was the same thing. I mean, the media caused that one. Never should have got involved in it. And hundreds of Americans died on the battlefield. Thousands died from diseases. think of how many people died in Cuba and suffered, and the Philippines. I mean, that's way worse. And we would have never gotten involved over there. All of those hundreds of thousands of people wouldn't have died. And you think, well, you know, World War I, we never should have gotten involved in that either.
Yeah.
You like the Mexican War? Well, it was kind of the same thing.
Not only that, the World War I, if you spoke out against it, look at what happened to
Throw you in
Eugene
jail.
Debs. Eugene Debs ran for president from prison because he was speaking out against the war, because he was seditious.
Take away your freedom of speech. Yeah.
So yeah, that's this kind of stuff that kind of got me more passionate about, I think, teaching history as opposed to just learning about history.
Should have been way more prepared for it than we were. Now, there's pretty good evidence to suggest they just kind of let it happen.
Oh yeah,
that's what it would take to get us involved in the war.
Well, and I mean, yeah, I mean it's really tough to kind of, I mean, because FDR is I recently did a video about this, as you know. I mean, but I think it was kind of more just common sense. I don't think it was like a big conspiracy by them. I just think it was like, yeah, I mean, we'll do a little bit here and there, but you know, if it happens, it happens. Kind of like if you don't lock your doors at night, you know, like, and you know, we're taking more of a gamble here, you know. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but yeah,
that kind of makes sense. I mean,
I just think that's where the passion for me has always come from. Like, you know, I'm teaching my students, like, hey, well, here's what really happened, and if I know like what most people commonly believe, like most people commonly they assume that Benjamin Franklin was flying a kite and then a bolt of electricity came from the sky and yada yada. Well, that's completely fabricated, completely made up, and yet there's so much stuff like that out there. Like I don't want to reveal too much, but I'm currently writing a script with Will Fox from Political Junkie News, and we're talking about the election of 2000, about how Ralph Nader, a lot of people argue that he spoiled the election, and this is something I'm pretty passionate about as well. Like I would argue that he did not, and so that I don't want to give away too much, but that's what I'm currently making.
Didn't he get like 10,000 votes in Florida?
Oh, just wait till the video comes out. You wouldn't believe how many people that were registered Democrats voted for George W. Bush in Florida. That alone is pretty eye-opening. But I'm just saying, like, it's not quite so simple that we have narratives that are floating around for the average citizen, and those narratives are false a lot of times, or at the very least, those narratives are flawed, you know. So that's the type of stuff that gets me, and it goes back to me, you know, always caring about the truth, you know. I mean, why did you become a teacher? Is it because your history teacher sucked so bad growing up?
Well, I mean, that's what's ironic about it, is you would think that'd be the last thing I'd ever end up doing, but it was more the discovery that there was something there for me, because it was a subject I had year after year after year after year after year and never learned anything. It's just kind of like, I mean, you talked about the truth. It's just once that door opened and I started seeing the stuff I should have learned and that most people don't know, that just curiosity grows and builds and builds and builds, and it's like it's never satisfied. And because I sit there and I teach kids in class now, and they're like, well, how do you know all this? You seem to know everything. And I'm just trying to tell them it's like this big web that's up there, and it's like once you get these little seeds, gives other information can latch onto it, and it's easier to remember than the first time through, because they're like, how do you even? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I teach like every single subject there is in social studies.
Yeah,
I do it over and over again, but it certainly didn't start that way, because I never learned anything. I mean, when I was a junior in high school, you could have asked me the most basic history questions, I wouldn't have known. And then my brother went to OSU Okmulgee and had a college professor there that was a Civil War reenactor. Like he, put on the Abraham Lincoln beard and top hat and came in and recited the Gettysburg Address and all of this kind of stuff. And told all the glorious stories of the Civil War and stuff. And my brother came back and was like, man, this stuff is so cool. And he lived in Clinton, was about 20 minutes away from the little town we lived in. And he got the History Channel when it came out. I don't know if you remember when the History Channel first came out.
It was actually, they taught history on it.
Yeah, people called it the Hitler Channel because they had like countless hours of World War II footage. But they also had a show called Civil War Journal that my brother started watching. And he was like, man, you need to cut. Because he told me some of those stories about Stonewall Jackson, and he's like, the South could have won the Civil War here and here and here. And I was like, really? That's interesting. He's like, you got to come over and watch this show. And I started going over there once or twice a week to watch it, and just kind of more and more got into it. And like my senior year, after I'd had all my history classes, was when I started getting into it more. And I'd actually go to the Clinton Library and get like books about the Civil War out and read them. And of course, everyone in school thought I was weird. Like, what kind of guy reads a book about John Hunt Morgan and the Civil War when you're a senior in high school? And then I remember the class underneath me had U.S. history, and I was like wanting to go in there because but they had it was a coach though, and I don't think he did much teaching either. And then the end of the year, it was April, my senior year, my principal comes walking in the room. It's like a month before I graduate, and he's like, Robert, what the bleep are you gonna do? And pulls me out, takes me down to the, as he knew he had to get my attention, and took me down there. And he was like, well, what are you going to do? He's like, have you taken the ACT? I was like, no. He's like, what are you going to do? I have no clue. And it was just kind of hit me right then and there. I've got a month until I graduate. That's how out of touch, out of tune I was with reality and the situation on the street, as they would say.
But you could have just worked in a museum or something, or been a historian. What made you want to go back to high school and teach? So, what
are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, we need to go take your ACT. And I remember him telling me you need a 17 in every category. He's like, I think I can get you into Southwestern. He's like, because he has connections there. I would not have qualified because I was like C's and D's. Everyone's want to make a B in high school. I was not a good student at all, but what school was never real, or was that, if that makes sense. It's like he just kind of went there and went through the motions, and said not a lot of teachers do what we do. I mean, it was more of a, here's the book, here's the paper. Twice a week we'd have to write down stuff off the board and turn it in. And it wasn't like what we do. And I think that's a big reason about why I am so engaged with that. But he was like, well, what are you going to do? He's like, you're going to end up, working in the grocery store for the rest of your life or whatever. And he had, one of my classmates was going to take the test, and he got me in to take the test. And I remember, like I said, I needed a 17 in every category. And I remember, I had a whole bunch of 17s on there. Just barely got in. He drove me over there, and he was like, I know that they're going to try to get you in or whatever. And Southwestern, they had a business school, they had pharmacy, and they had education. That was like the 3 categories. That was pretty much it. You had to major in one of those things. And there's no way I could have done pharmacy. Business, or whatever. I was kind of like whatever. And there was like education. I was like, but being a teacher or what? Crazy. I could see myself like being a coach and like maybe doing history or something. And I kind of liked history, and I just wound up enrolling in history education and got in there. For the first time, I had professors that knew what the heck they were talking about. It was utterly fascinating. I mean, I was with a friend last night when we were driving around. We went through Weatherford and reminiscing on the college days or whatever. We actually had the discussion about missing class and stuff, how kids today, they go to college and just don't go to class and stuff. And I was like, I missed class one time. It was one world history class. It was an 8 a.m. class. Only 8 a.m. class I ever had. I remember one morning, it's just, alarm went off. I was like, golly, I'm so tired, and didn't go. And like, still to this day, I wonder what the heck she talked about that day. It's like I missed that day. It was like the only time I ever missed class.
I also
One
didn't
class
have
all
very many
day.
good. I also didn't have very good history teachers. That growing up, I had one that stands out. I always say Mr. Emmett is the guy that stood out in 7th grade because he was engaging and he had a sense of humor and he did impressions of people like John F. Kennedy and stuff like that. But other than that, like I kind of mostly wanted to be a history teacher because of all my bad experiences. And like you said, yeah, a lot of them, they put the notes on the overhead, okay, copy down the outline of these notes, or just hand you a worksheet without even trying to explain much at all. Like, okay, just kind of.
Yeah, they just never did it any justice. And that's what I feel like every day when I walk in there. It's like, I've got to do this story justice. I've got to tell this story. Because most people never hear it. Most people, they're clueless. It's just like an amazing story to tell.
We brought this up before, the topic of why students think social studies is boring. And I had a YouTube, for lack of a better word, let me say, a YouTube subscriber that has contacted me just today. And I thought of this, like, and this kid is, he's 10 years old, and he says, you know, he's very passionate about history. He wants to be in politics when he grows up. And he says he tries to like get his friends interested in history. And he had like a really good line about, you know, history is really just whatever you care about in the past. It's not like, I felt it was very deep for a 10-year-old that he said this, like something along the lines of, you know, it's like, it's just your life in the past, really. It's what you're passionate about. It's everything you're passionate about in the past and everything else. I mean, and that is the biggest issue with kind of related to what we were supposed to talk about tonight is that, you know, there's standards that we have to teach. There are curriculum guides that districts have that we have to follow. My district does not have that, but my last district did. And we are limited. We can't just teach whatever we want. But how do you get a student who doesn't see the relevance of the Treaty of Versailles in his life excited about the Treaty of Versailles? Well, it's a challenge, but it's possible. Because what I do is I just like say, okay, hey, have you ever had an agreement with somebody? Or you take it to the level of like their day-to-day life of like, okay, what you ever have an experience where, you know, you agreed not to do something, like say with you had a brother you had to share a room with or something, and you know, said you can't cross this line, you don't touch my stuff, you don't touch, you know, stuff like that. I mean, to try to make it more relevant. But then of course, still, why do I have to learn about the Treaty of Versailles? Which is, I think, the most important. Like, for your students, what do you tell them when you say, why are we learning this stuff?
I've tried a lot of different things throughout the years. One of the ones I usually go to is, you know, it's the story of us. It's our history. The best way to tell where we're going is where we've been. That's the story of the American struggle. And I liken it to, you know, imagine tomorrow if you woke up and you didn't remember anything about yourself or who you are. You know, you had amnesia. It's like not understanding our history is the exact same thing. You don't know who we are as a people, a culture. And as I said, the best indicator of what is about to happen is what has already happened. You know, and it's a story of a struggle. And I'm like, there are certain things in American history you need to be aware of if you're going to live in our society. I mean, like the 10 themes of social studies that I teach, you know, the history of race in America, technology, gender, immigration, government power, and federalism, states' rights, you know, social issues, the role religions played in the country's history. It's like, if you don't understand this, you don't really know anything. You know, and it's a good story. You know, I'm always, throughout the entire course, I'm trying to remind them that, thinking, you know, these were the stakes here. This is what could have been lost. I mean, it's like the other day I was talking about the Persian Wars. and the Athenians and Spartans trying to fight off the Persian invasion. I'm like, do you realize what would have been lost here if the Persians would have succeeded? Like everything about Western civilization just goes down the toilet right there. Like the foundations of democracy, and it's comes down to a couple of 100 Spartans holding them back. That's that's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Like, what would the world be like if just little things had gone different here and there?
That's why those YouTube channels do better than ours. The what if alternative history channels.
Reasoning, argumentation, looking at evidence. I mean, this is stuff lawyers and lots of lawyers have history minors, history degrees.
Yeah, I think what you said about stories is really important, because you look at a lot of reality TV shows, and you just have people that are really on this. If you were to look at it deeply, these people are not that exciting, but the way that the editors and the producers of the show can tell a story out of something, make something from nothing. We can do the same thing as teachers. We have that capability.
And that's what my class, when I first started, it was very, very, very story driven. It's like every lesson, every day was its own individual story. And it had through lines, and it had the story arcs, and like even the 10 themes and stuff, it was there, but I didn't have it at the forefront. But then they came out with those standards, then they came out with this EOI state test, and they came down mandatory, and every year it got thicker and fatter, and every year they threw more names in there, and it just destroyed the narrative. I mean, I taught history as a story, and I was like, probably 240 times throughout the course of the year, I have to stop and say, now this is what you need to know about this, and this is that, and I have to sit there and tell them about the Platten-Teller Amendment. I have to stop what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, and I'll tell them, why the Platten-Teller Amendment are on here. And I have to tell them it's because certain people write these standards, and they've got a certain agenda. And we've got this little thing called Guantanamo Bay, where we have the Al-Qaeda terrorists, and we've got them locked up there. And a lot of people don't think we should have them locked up. So they think Americans need to know what Guantanamo Bay is and what's going on there. So that's the real issue. But this is how we got Guantanamo Bay. It's like that's when it showed up, when the whole debate about were we shutting down Guantanamo Bay or not. It was not in my standards before that. That's how bad it is.
Purely political.
Yeah, that's how bad it is. And I've got 17 pages, and it's just a list of things. It's just, it doesn't say anything else, but it's just like got a name like Phyllis Wheatley, Ida Tarbell. Well, hey, John Hancock used to be on the list, and he disappeared, but they put Mercy Otis Warren in his place. It's like, you think Mercy Otis Warren is more important than John Hancock?
The problem with that, the problem with I find with trying to teach, you're trying to get a diverse range of perspectives always. But the fact is, there's some groups, there's some sectors that we just don't have their voice in history. Like, it's just, we don't have an accurate picture of their voice. I mean, the sad fact of the matter is that most of American history has been white men who have written down the history, who have run the country, and that's diverse perspectives. So it does feel token when you're ever trying to do that. Like, oh, you got to sneak in, Black History Month.
No,
you got to sneak in these females, this list of females to talk about. Yeah.
I don't use them ever. I mean, my textbooks, every time we get new textbooks, they make me buy them. And I have to basically throw out the old ones that have never even been used. Their covers have never even been opened. They still make that sound, when you open them, that bind, that, I don't know if you can hear it, but that's like never used.
You make your own textbooks. You sent me some.
They do that every chapter. Every chapter of the book, it's divided up by race and gender. Like, it's done intentionally. Like, what history book have you ever looked at, U.S. history book that didn't say African Americans in the 1840s and women in the 1840s? And then they like segregate the history.
Yeah, that kind of defeats the purpose.
It's on purpose, yeah.
They should be part of the official narrative. They shouldn't have their own separate narrative.
Yeah, and separate months. And I mean, Women's History Month. I mean, come on. Can't we talk about women's history year round? African American history? Can't we? Isn't that U.S. history?
Morgan Freeman said that famously.
Yeah, I mean,
African American history is American history.
What's Jewish history? And that guy was like, the liberal with the deer in the headlight looks like, he disagrees with the narrative, and he's like, when's your month? When's Jewish History Month? Like, there isn't one. He's like, do you want one? It's like, no, I don't. He goes, well, I don't want a Black History Month either. I was like, yeah.
That's I think
my favorite clips of all time.
Well, back to my presidential election
I'm not going to talk about African American History Month for 1 month. It's throughout the whole thing. It's like, it's in order. It's like when it's time to talk about Frederick Douglass, I talk about Frederick Douglass because it's in order.
Yeah, I think.
Time to talk about Booker T. Washington and Du Bois. That's what I talk about.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks comes up in the Civil Rights Movement. I'm not going to cram all of that into 1 month.
But so much of our history.
It doesn't even make sense to teach it that way.
I kind of see where they're trying to go with it, because so much of our history
trying to put focus on it, but
political history is what dominates, and it's like, oh, look what our government did, look at the reforms within government, and the common people get forgotten. And it seems like there was a dramatic shift of that once Howard Zinn came around in the the 60s and 70s. There was all these historians that said, hey, what about the average Joe? That person needs their voice heard. And the social fabric, that the narrative, we need that voice to drive the narrative, not just these government, the politicians basically. And I get that. I'm making this presidential election series, and I feel like, man, I'm kind of getting sick of just focusing on powerful people.
Oh yeah, do you know one of our most popular videos that we have is daily life in the 1930s, and it's just about the people and the stuff they went through and the stuff they endured and what it was like living through that. It's not about FDR, it's not about the New Deal, it's not about the stock market crash, it's not about Wall Street, it's not about the U.S. military, how much we depleted it during the 30s. It's about your average day-to-day American. And people resonate with it. They love it. I mean, it gets shared all over Pinterest.
Yeah.
And every day I get an email because Pinterest is like, you got 4 pins, 4 repins, 4 shares, whatever. It's on there every day.
Yeah, you're not a big Pinterest fan, eh?
No, I like it, but it's just, I was more complaining that it's like 3 or 4. At least they send it all at once, but it's like, this person has really shared 4 of your pins.
Well, but back to what you were saying.
It's consistently a top video, and I think there's a reason for it. And
Yeah.
Jake loves that day in the life of ancient Greece. We've got one, it's Greece, Rome, Carthage, and Persia. He loves writing that. When he taught world history, every section he had one of those. What was it like just for the average person living? He said those were some of the students' favorite lessons.
Well, something that's always successful I've found with anybody who teaches 20th century American history is focusing on the culture of the 1950s.
Oh, yeah.
And the culture of the 1960s. There's a really cool presentation that a fellow teacher at my old school did. He basically told history through the music of the 1960s. Like, he would play the song first, the students would follow along with the lyrics, and then he'd say, this song was written about this, and this is what happened at the time, that this was a hit, and he kind of wrapped it around that, and the students were really into it.
What I really love about the music of that era, it all had meaning, like Eve of Destruction, and that's one of the greatest songs I've ever heard. I try to get the students to listen to the lyrics. I'm like, this is the best written song I think I've ever heard. And of course, they have a hard time sitting there for 5 minutes listening to lyrics. But I need to just start printing them off, doing assignments
music
about it.
video
Yeah.
with the lyrics on the screen. Yeah, I mean, if that's the way culture is I think a lot of times the gateway into getting students interested in history for sure, because you know what we love to do, you know, really shows you our own culture. And if you can really tap into that, I mean, yeah, focusing on dead, rich, powerful people, it just only goes so far. I mean, Andrew Jackson is great because he's interesting, but Martin Van Buren was the most boring guy ever, probably, and he basically, I mean,
I have it's weird. It's because of the internet. I've never met the guy. He's an economics professor at West Texas A&M University. But his argument is that it's not those rich, powerful people that really move history. You know, it's not the politicians. The politicians have to react to the people.
Yeah,
and
they're always last to the party.
Yeah, and it's exactly. You know, he says it's really the innovation, the inventors, the innovators. It's the big. You know, it's Thomas Edison. I mean, reading through history on Facebook. We had the March Madness tournament 4 or 5 years ago. It was like, who's the most important American ever? It wasn't a general. It wasn't a president or any other politician. It wasn't a movie star, actor, or athlete. It was an inventor.
Yeah.
And Thomas Edison had a bigger impact on the way we live today than any other American who ever lived. It was an easy choice. It was a blowout. It came down to him and James Madison. The guy who wrote the Constitution. The Bill of Rights, or electricity, phonograph, movie camera, light bulb. I should say the electric power plant. He didn't obviously invent electricity, but the electric power plant, all this stuff. I said it's him, hands down. Wasn't even close. I mean, the vote was like 28-4 or something.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating.
I realize he's not a common average person, but think about the impact that had on the common average person, way more than some bill written by Congress.
Well, think about someone like Mark Zuckerberg today, or Steve Jobs, or Elon Musk. I mean, these are the people that definitely have more influence in our students' lives than, say,
the modern
Gingrich or somebody.
And that's a big deal. The way we communicate.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even name all the
information, how they consume it.
You know what, the guy who invented the internet, who was not Al Gore, but the guy who actually did, I mean, nobody knows who that guy is. Like, maybe I could Google that right now and see what pops up.
I always heard it was like more of a U.S. military thing for communication, like the basis of what the internet is.
Yeah, well, right, the framework. Well, look at this. Two people that show up here. Two people that I've never heard of.
Is a personal computer more important than the internet, or vice versa?
Well,
just like you don't even need like a desktop computer anymore.
That's a good point.
Yes. It's like I don't know if you've ever seen the stats on it, but it's like an insanely high number of Hispanic Americans. This is their computer. Like, this is where their internet is. It's like they don't even have we need these big clunky things because we do all the video editing and stuff. But it's like, if I didn't have to do that, it's like I almost wouldn't even need it anymore.
Oh, definitely.
It's kind of weird to think about.
A great example, I think, where
I need the big keyboard, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think a great example about where governments last to the party. I mean, you have drug policy, which is that's a more obvious one. But if we want to stay with the technology theme, I think self-driving cars is going to be a fascinating development when you look at legislation over the next decade, because a lot of, I've noticed, legislators, talking at the state level or local level, they seem to be mixed in terms. Some of them are excited about the opportunity, about how much better our lives will be with self-driving cars. Others are horrified by it, and they're trying to, increase regulation, increase government power over this. They want to make it so that there's ways to take over a self-driving car more easily in case something goes wrong. While the facts,
I mean, the bad guys can take it over too. That'll become the new way to assassinate somebody. Back into their car.
Never thought about that. Yeah, that's a never even thought about that. But yeah, I mean, this is a great example of how the technology can a lot of times be hurt by people in power, because people in power, they always err on the side of safety before, because they're trying to get reelected. They're trying to look good, and like, they don't want to be that politician that didn't do something. They don't want to be that politician that voted no. There's one politician that voted no when Pearl Harbor was attacked, voted no on declaring war against Japan. Yeah, the pacifist, I forgot her name, but
Jeanette Rankin.
Oh, that's her name. Okay.
Do it for all the mothers whose sons are going to die in this war.
But
the only woman in Congress.
And she's not looked at as a hero. I mean, maybe to some, but overall, she's largely a name that's forgotten in history. And
I mention her twice a year when she votes no for World War I.
Wow.
When she votes no for World War II.
That's right.
And I even have pictures from the right era where she got the big hat on with the feathers on.
Yeah, I mean, my original point, though, is that a lot of times politicians will care more about their legacy and re-election, and so that naturally makes it so that they're a little bit more hesitant to embrace something that is unknown, even though there's plenty of evidence that self-driving cars are safe and that they've been tested quite extensively. It doesn't matter. I mean, they don't want to be the one who says, "Oh yeah, we're not going to regulate anything," and then there's a car wreck, and then they get all the blame. All the fingers point to that.
Well, it's the first person, first accident with a self-driving car, and someone dies. I mean, that person, the amount of money they're going to get from that company.
Well, it already happened. It already happened with, I believe it was Tesla that happened with.
Where they're testing them, because surely those things aren't on the dadgum road, are they?
No, they are on the road. There are people with Teslas that drive them to work, and they are sitting there drinking a coffee and reading a book while it's driving them. Yeah, they're already out there. As I'm telling you,
I know my computer doesn't always work like it's supposed to.
Yeah, well, my computer's 4 years old, so.
That's how old those. I've had all kinds of computer problems here recently.
But
that's right how old they are. I mean, I got them in 2012.
But the fact that human beings are so resistant to change, I feel like there's a lot of progress that gets hindered because of that. I mean, I bring this point up all the time, and
that the younger people are like the opposite.
That's kind of what's driving the culture. That's why they say
with a lot of change. Change is normal.
Well, they say the teenagers, a lot of times, they drive the entire culture for all of society. I mean, which is kind of crazy to think about, that the students that we teach on a daily basis, they're the ones really that are in control.
Well, wherever they go, I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk says it all the time. They're the ones that decide what's cool. They had MySpace, and then it was taken on by old people, so they had to go somewhere else. Then they go to Facebook, and then all the old people show up. They're like, "Oh crap!" Then they go to Snapchat, and then they're on Snapchat, and all the old people come in. The old people and marketers kind of ruin everything.
Yeah, they do. Well, the people that want to make money off of it, and the people that are always last to the party are not as cool.
Instagram, all the young people were on Instagram, and then all the old people show up.
Well, I say I was on the Facebook back in 2004, and I'm darn proud of it. Back when you had to be in college to be a member of it. I still think that gives me a little bit of coolness, right? I don't know. But yeah, same with the issues that matter the most. A lot of these wedge issues that we hear about in the media, like abortion, like gay marriage, like a lot of social issues. It seems like teenagers are more passionate about that, perhaps because of their, being affected by friends or family or something like that. And they tend to be more emotional issues too. They're not quite something that, intellectuals really like to go on about forever, because they kind of you go in circles when you try to have a dialogue. But those are the issues that are constantly being brought up, and I feel part of the reason is because, well, teenagers are driving the conversation. If you can get teenagers on board for like a law that you're trying to pass, like if we say we wanted to pass an amendment to the Constitution that said you have to you're going to get rid of the Electoral College because the Electoral College is outdated and yada yada yada, it's not very good for democracy. Well, if enough teenagers were all tweeting and retweeting and sharing on social media and passionate about this, maybe that would carry over to the rest of the culture, and maybe that would carry over to a law actually getting changed. Do you think that would actually be possible?
There's one of two ways they could go. I mean, you just described the social justice warriors on Twitter and Tumblr and stuff, and I mean, we're starting to see a huge backlash to it. But yeah, it would depend on who the groups. Be who the groups are and what they're pushing. But yeah, I mean that's how you're going to get the attention. It's like you don't even need a budgeting campaign. You don't even need money to do this stuff anymore. It's definitely going to put it in the nation's dialogue. I do think they direct a lot of the national dialogue on issues. I mean, you saw it with gay marriage.
Black Lives Matter, I think.
I mean, it went from
youth movement
being nothing to being all over the place. Like, you couldn't escape it. And that's because, I mean, everyone's their own media outlet now.
But I think
almost anyone in the world.
But I think in terms of culture, though, just in general, you look at shows like Will and Grace in the 1990s. You look at what happened with when Ellen. Remember when Ellen DeGeneres came out as a lesbian, and how big a deal that was, and how controversial it was.
That was there without the internet and without social media. I don't think it would have gotten there near as fast. I mean, it laid the foundation. But yeah, we went from it being like 3 states to then there was like 13 and then 6, and then just, of course, it was the Supreme Court, but boom, all of them.
And I think you're seeing
went back and told me Oklahoma, Utah, and Alabama would have gay marriage. If you'd have told me that in 2003, 2004, they're like, oh, or even 2006, let's just say, hey, in 10 years, they're going to have it.
I say the same thing. Oh yeah, I say the same thing about marijuana legalization. I think within probably 10 years it will be legalized.
But it was to the point. I mean, I talked to people that in Oklahoma that were against it. You know, and I can still find a few, but it's like pretty much accepted now, pretty much set in stone. It's like with Roe v. Wade and gay marriage and stuff. I mean, you would find more people in our part of the country that speak out against it than you would just about anywhere else. But
you're right. Like,
you hear a lot of opposition to it. I don't know if it's because they get shouted down, or if it's because they're ashamed to, or they don't want to seem like a bigot or whatever. I mean, you have no way of really knowing what they're thinking.
You don't. I mean, unless you check the comments on social media that are more anonymous, and then you're like, oh, that's what you're really thinking.
You know, a lot of people wouldn't speak out about many things, you know, like take the illegal immigration thing. You know, Donald Trump comes along, and then people are like, dude, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to say it. Yeah. And, you know, it's just like the swelling grows. So who knows how much of it is they thought it, but they're afraid to say it, or, hey, I don't want to lose my job. Hey, I don't want to be ridiculed. I don't want to be crucified online. Am I the only one that thinks this? And then he comes out and says it, so it's okay. Or is it more of, hey, this is the way the wind's blowing, so I'm going to go because you're bandwagoning? It's hard to say.
I think it's both. I mean, I think a lot of the reasons why it seems like there's more hatred in our country right now, really all over the world, is because the voices that were not heard before are now heard. It's not like we're necessarily more racist than we used to be, or more.
Oh, I mean, I would say
whatever it is, but
we're the least racist we've been at any point in our history, because it's just now there's a big megaphone magnifying glass, and the media just, I mean, come on, so much of this is the media. It's insane that they will make a story out of nothing. And then other things, you're like, oh, well, sure, this should be a big story. And it's just like, they won't even touch it.
Yeah.
Because they've got a specific narrative, and it's like, this is what it's going to be.
Back to the emotions. They're trying to hit the emotions. And
yeah, what you said earlier, it's like, this is what gets people to watch. This is what gets people to tune in. Today, it's, we got to get them to click on the story. Because we're going to put 50 ads on there that bombard us, so you can't even show something on one of our episodes of context because ads are popping up everywhere, blowing out our viewers.
Well, our most popular episode of this show, it was the Trump episode, I believe, compared to when a lot of people were comparing him to Hitler, and then I threw out Mussolini and others. We talked about that because it really gets people fired up and emotional. And when you're trying to be just intellectual and you're trying to be rational, I feel like you're not going to get a lot of people interested in that. That requires critical thinking, and the part of the brain that deals with emotions is not going to get fired up as much. Even the Electoral College, I get passionate about Electoral College, but I think there's still so many people that are disconnected from that. Like, they don't.
I mean, what percentage of the American people, let's just go 15 and over, what percentage of the American people do you think probably don't even have a clue what the Electoral College is? I couldn't explain it to you.
I know all my students.
I think it's a scary high number. I could sit here and tell my class, hey, this Electoral College, I could spend 30 minutes explaining it.
It's complex. It's hard.
And then I could say, hey, the next day, what's the Electoral College? The number that wouldn't be able to tell me what it is terrifying.
I'd say
Did you see the man on the street stuff where they walk up on,
Yeah, like Jay Leno used to do.
Dice. So his name's some guy named Mark. Mark Dice, goes out and just asks basic questions, and they're clueless.
Yeah, who was president during the Civil War? George Washington.
Who won the Civil War?
Us. Yeah, no. I think you're right. I mean, I would probably say maybe 75% of Americans don't truly understand the Electoral College. I don't know. I mean, you can simplify it down quite a bit. I mean, I've learned how to simplify what it is. I mean, but yeah, that's the issue. Like I said, like, it's just too complex. If people aren't understanding it, their brain shuts off and they can't get too passionate about it one way or another. I mean, it's just, and so it starts with, that's why I do a lot of things in my classroom that tries to build critical thinking skills more than anything, to try to get students to think about different perspectives in their own, to try to always be the devil's advocate, because they get locked in their box and they're like, well, I'm fine. I already have things figured out in my little bubble, so we're good. So why, question, that, and so, and then of course, confirmation bias is something that's a huge obstacle for so many people. You and I are included in that. We can't say that we're above confirmation bias, because when I go and look for information, I'm usually looking at information through sources that I've already, I already like, It's not like I'm like, say there's a news story and you kind of hear it from like say
CNN, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, you hear the news story from a friend, you're like, oh, I want to find out more about that. And so you go to your website that tends to kind of have the slant that you agree with. And
there's a
you
reason
don't go to other sources.
Is the most popular website out there for news.
Oh yeah, people know it's going to be,
because it's just, there was such a void there, because all the major media outlets were left leaning. So there you have it.
Yeah, I always get a kick out of Drudge Report. I think
good headlines.
I want to see what it's saying right now. I got to check it out. Oh, you're not okay. Present to everyone.
Trying to pin scandal on me. Pal Pop.
Child suicide bomber.
Where?
Was blown up by remote control.
Oh my gosh, where was that? Turkey?
But
Is
it's
that
kind of clear.
another?
It's always clear when you see an advertisement like this, like, okay, where, well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I try to check out as many sources as I can, but for somebody who leans conservative, this is a good go-to, right? Because they're gonna have
Yeah.
their spin built in right away. They're like, okay, before I read the news story, I'm already gonna know that the spin matches my confirmation bias, so I can go ahead and proceed to read the story, or I can just, yeah, like you said, read the headline. I'm good to go. I know the story, and that's the problem right here. I mean, I have students look at different primary sources to try to get the same, or to try to learn about the same event. And I'm talking primary sources, not what most of our media is on the internet, which is secondary sources, people that were not there, people that are just reacting. And I brought this up to you before, is that so many quote unquote news outlets, even online, are really just people reacting to something. They don't even give that many facts at all. And, you know, like, I don't know if there was some poll out a few years back when Jon Stewart was still with The Daily Show, and you saw the same thing, like, how many of these people that watch The Daily Show, this is their news. This is where they get their news from. I mean, it was pretty high. Like, they,
No, it was like with the millennials and stuff. It was like 65% of them trusted that more than a normal news outlet, if I remember right.
I can kind of see where they're coming from too. I mean, but the whole point is that you should never really fully trust any news source. I mean, it is sad that sometimes a show like The Daily Show would get something more accurate than, say, CNN or something like that, which I've found to be true in the past. But at the same time, you really have to go out of your way to try to get a more full picture of things. And I think a lot of what guides this show is that we don't talk about events until the dust has settled a little bit, because a lot of times when you have breaking news information that's, you know, like, look what just happened, and you don't have a chance to digest it fully and reflect, you know, to really
You just
think
see all
deeply about it.
the misrepresented stories. I mean, it's like, you know, when the San Bernardino thing happened. I don't know if you ever saw all of the you know, tweets that got screen grabbed and stuff. You know, they were like, "Oh, it's angry white crazy males again, going and shooting people. When are we going to take away the white man's guns?" and all of this stuff. You know, just it's kind of like that. It's like you're the media. You feel, oh, we got to get something out there. It's just,
Yeah,
there's no way of knowing what's going on.
yeah, and sometimes news organizations will tweet out stuff that's wrong as well. They just want to get something out there and want to be the first to get it out there.
Human nature. I mean, they already have that narrative in their head, and they're like, "Oh, well, this must be. We're going with it."
Right. The older I get, I like to think I'm trying to avoid that trap where I have, you know, everything figured out and everything just kind of can fit nice on. You can fit it onto my linear path of where everything is going. Like, no, constantly I'm having to reevaluate things. Constantly, like, you're sending me information, I'm just like, oh man, this goes against everything I thought I knew. Maybe I need it, you know. And I'm always resistant to whatever you send me. I'm always same thing when I'll send you stuff too, just to kind of get you riled up. And like, I went back and forth with many of my friends and family on Facebook recently, talking about the election coming up, and you know, finally I just said, hey, let's just all admit that we all are so subject to our confirmation bias right now, and that we are literally just Googling things to match exactly what we already believe. And I tried from then on out to just say, okay, here are some facts. These are facts. You just interpret those facts how you want to interpret them, but that's all I can do, right? There's a certain point where it's just like, well, I can't change your mind by my confirmation bias. I'm just going to have to give you as pure facts as I can, try to give you objective evidence, and hopefully maybe you'll come around to seeing my interpretation. But that said, my interpretation could be completely flawed looking at the same facts, because that's what happens a lot of times. We have the same objective information, and both sides are looking at that information completely differently. And as long as you have that, then you're going to have this conflict. I mean, that you're seeing going back to the tribalism that we talked about earlier.
And we, the rest of the world, have to live with the consequences of your vote, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, what really annoys me that I've been hearing a lot lately is, you know, you have to vote for Hillary Clinton because she's the only thing that can stop us against Trump. And if Trump gets elected, it would be the worst thing ever. And always respond to be the worst thing ever. They said the same thing about Barry Goldwater in 1964. Like he was, if remember that ad that the Lyndon Johnson campaign had of the nuclear weapon, like you want to vote for Goldwater, and then this little kid in the field, like this nuke falling on the kid. That's what's going to happen if you vote for Goldwater. I mean, it's fear based. It's not. There's so much that we don't know, but we're so afraid of. Anyway, and a lot of it's back to tribalism. Like that person is not on my team. Clearly not on my team. Cannot be trusted at all. We cannot find common ground with somebody like that.
So much of it is too. I mean, it's just, I talk about it every year when I talk about George Washington begging, pleading, don't start political parties, but it's like inevitable.
It is.
It's like up and down the line. Either you agreed on those issues. There's three kinds of people. You either agree with Alexander Hamilton, you agree with Thomas Jefferson, or you just could not possibly care less and you're ignorant about it and don't know anything. You're just, it says a third of the people, doesn't necessarily mean percentage wise, but the third group, just out there roaming around, clueless, mindless, and at times I envy them because I'll hear their simple conversations. Like I was walking through the mall yesterday, and people were walking in and out of stores, and they were sitting there, it's this cream that you rub on your nose and face, and then you put some foundation. I'm like, and for a moment, I thought, oh gosh, there's someone there. And I thought, well, what must it be like living in that world where you don't know that we're inching closer and closer to war with Russia, that you don't know that China's, flexing its muscles in the South China Sea, and that you don't know who Kim Jong-un is, that you don't know what's going on in Europe with the refugee crisis, that you don't know all of this stuff, because these people are clueless, but they're happy, they're giggly, they're walking around, they got their little group of friends in their pack, and they're having a good time. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, is Western civilization hanging in the balance? Is this the end? Is this how it all goes down? What the impact of this next election's enormous. It's like it's two completely different trajectories, and we're going one way or the other. And
but see, that's
about cream that you rub on your face.
But admit that's your own bias too. That you may admit that maybe you could possibly be over worried about this. That maybe it won't make that much difference after all. Whoever gets elected. I mean, could you admit that might be a possibility?
I think it's important. I'm not necessarily saying that if a certain political candidate wins, that particular person's going to almost certainly force us into confrontation with Russia. But you never know. I mean, I know it matters who wins the course of the country, big time. Because we've got a pretty clear, I'm not saying it's night and day, but there's big differences that you could even argue W. Bush and Obama, not that big of a difference, not that big of a rift. Here it's pretty clear.
I think that if you look at most of the presidents of our lifetimes, you would not see significant differences in not only policy, but principles, character traits overall. But
because who was the last Republican president that was fiscally conservative? Eisenhower?
Well, I mean, I don't know if Eisenhower.
He built the interstate highway system.
I was going to say Eisenhower he talked trash about the military-industrial complex at the same time, still wanting to build up the military-industrial.
Herbert Hoover?
No, Herbert Hoover was a spender, man. FDR was that he got on him for not being fiscally conservative enough, and FDR's running mate Nance Garner, he called him a socialist. Yeah, the FDR ticket called Hoover a socialist in the 1932 election. So that tells you that
Calvin Coolidge.
Calvin Coolidge is, yeah, I agree. Calvin Coolidge
He's
is
the last conservative.
But that's just one part of it too. I think a lot of the differences are over exaggerated because, again, we're tribal. We just assume that it's us versus them, and that there's. I mean, I feel like there's a silent majority of people in this country that they can see both sides, and they can understand both sides enough, and they don't understand why there's so much vitriol, on one side or the other. And I feel like a lot of times I'm kind of in that camp. Like, I'm less ideological than I used to be when I was younger, because the more I learn, the more I realize, well, maybe it's not so simple after all. Maybe the shades of gray are more than I originally thought. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't stop learning more about all the sides. I mean, and just give up, say, okay, I give up. They're all bad, So that's the challenge is, I mean, but I always think it's like, you hear this is the most important election ever. And I just get tired of hearing that too. I mean, it's not, it could be, maybe it is. We won't know for a long time. I just think a lot of everything is just fear-based, back to emotions. There's not a lot of reasoning going on, unless you call reasoning voting for the lesser two evils. That's not reasoning to me either. That's still fear-based. That's still emotions-based. I mean, we're going to get more of the same because we're still in the current system. It's a system. The challenges that we face are systemic. There's not one person that can change an entire system unless you're going to actually
become a dictator.
Become a dictator, exactly. Which some people say Trump is going to. But the Constitution, I think, kind of supposed to prevent that from happening. So, by just the Constitution, right? We don't pay attention to that much anymore.
We haven't for the past 8 years. Actually, even
8 years.
Patriot Act and all that stuff.
240 years.
15 years.
I don't know, or 230 years, I should say. Yeah, the Constitution was meant to be just urinated on from the get-go. I mean, even the Federalist Papers automatically, they're just like, okay, well, this is what it's really saying. No, anti-federalism, this is what it's really saying. And you have people like Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, two of the smartest people in American history, two of the most brilliant minds to ever exist really on the planet, and they're sitting there, they're reduced to tribalism. You freaking Jefferson, and you got I mean, the horrible things said between those two. I mean, freaking a duel between Aaron Burr and Hamilton. I mean, duels. I mean, these are supposed to be enlightened people.
That was common back then.
Yeah, I know. For many other times.
Of honor. By golly. Honor was above all else.
Yeah, that's true. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left, so we maybe should wrap up here. I realize that was a pretty good discussion we had here, though.
Yeah, there were down moments, there were up moments. It's like we need a highlight reel.
Yeah. Oh, I loved your rant about the kind of the wars that we went through. So you talked about Vietnam and the expansion.
The energy level up. It's hard to do.
Yeah. I think we had enough.
9 or 10 o'clock at night. Well, we got a whole full week in the trenches ahead of us.
Well, I just want to tell the audience that we may not be doing this quite as often as we did in the summer. I just want to warn you because let me tell you this. I guarantee we're going to do an episode before the election because we've got to do an election episode. But really, I was
bringing Will for that one.
I think the more the merrier, honestly. Maybe try to get Tom back into and Cypher, who knows? But don't expect these every 2 weeks like they were in the summer. That's for sure. I mean, I've just got a heavy plate.
You try to do too much.
Full plate.
I am.
I'm trying to do way too much.
2 children.
Yeah.
And a wife that you cannot abandon. Let's give her to her. So you're not getting any more cookies, man. You're on the bad side of her.
Yeah.
That was like cruel. She brought that in, and I was like, then you had to show them to me.
I'm sorry you didn't get any.
You have to gotta eat them.
Well, they were warm, fresh out of the oven. I couldn't let them.
Yeah, then you had cold milk. You can't.
Yeah.
Milk.
Anyway,
a grown man eating milk and cookies.
Okay.
9 o'clock at night.
If you want to get a hold of us, contextpodcast@gmail.com. That's contextpodcast@gmail.com. And again, if you want to review us on Stitcher or iTunes, that would really help us. I'll put on the screen again. This is what it looks like on iTunes, and this is our 20th episode, so it's been a pretty good run the past 14 months, and we're still going to keep it going as much as we can during the school year. Before we go, Robert, you want to promote what you've been working on and your channel again?
Reading Through History on YouTube. Readingthroughhistory.com is the website. We've got books on the 1920s and 30s out there on Amazon. Those are our 2 latest releases, just called History Brief. So you can go check those out on Amazon.com. If you type in just History Brief and probably Jake Henderson's name with it, you should find them. That would be either in paperback or on the Kindle. The Depression one's done fairly well on the Kindle.
All right. And then, YouTube.
Might even challenge the American Revolution for popularity on our books.
Ooh.
If you have not bought the paperback book, it's out there too.
My brother and dad really love it, and I love it as well.
Did you get the version that actually had the big words on it?
I did actually get the real version, yeah. So I know there's a little mess up there.
The little boxes that they were misprinting. That aged me 2 or 3 years when they started doing it.
Frustrating. But yeah, so
that's why I'm kind of a control freak, because other people screw things up.
Okay, and then you're watching this on my channel, Mr. Beats Social Studies channel, so you know where my channel's at. But make sure you subscribe online to the podcast, which will be released in a couple days. And as always, thanks for watching and listening. And until next time.
Listen to it in your car.
That's right. Peace out.